So first of all, thank you guys for coming and doing this. And you're in Israel for, some of you more or less been traveling with Vibe Israel for more than a week or so. So maybe we can start by you telling us how was your experience and maybe a highlight or two.
So yeah, my experience has been amazing. So it's my first time in Israel, so it's been really, really eye-opening, really, really cool. A couple of highlights are definitely what Jackson and I did yesterday. Eden, myself, Jackson, and another photographer went out to Akko, and we cliff jumped or jumped off the ancient walls. It was really cool, made for some cool photos. So it's probably one of my biggest highlights, other than all of the hummus we've been eating. I'm surprised you don't have a plate of it up here for us right now. So it's been really cool. Oh, yeah, Rob King. Sound American, but I'm from Australia. I was born into a expatriate family that traveled around the world, so I started traveling at a young age. Moved to America for college when I was 19. I went to about 16 schools before I turned 15. So, ooh, there it is. So yeah, I'm the test person. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey. Yeah, that's me. So I'm actually not a blogger. I'm a photographer. I'm the odd one out. So yeah, if any of you have any photography questions, feel free to ask me afterwards. But I have 215,000 followers. Yeah, so it's fun. Hopefully I'll have 215,000 plus 100 after this, and we can all talk.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Becky Van Dijk. I'm originally from England. I'm half English, half Dutch, hence my surname. I am, I guess I would say, a blogger, but primarily I'm the founder of a female travel community, which is called We Are Travel Girls. The community is something where we curate female travel stories from different women around the world on our website. We create trips, events around the world to bring women together. So part of that is blogging and editing, obviously, their content. And then in addition, I have my own personal travel blog. Israel highlights. I would say my Israel highlight has to be the food. I've discovered today, we just did a food tour today, and I think I might move into more food blogging, which I hadn't realized I was quite so into food, but I really am here. So that's been probably my biggest highlight, is the food, but also the country. I love the landscape. We went out to the desert. That was a highlight for me, camping in the desert. Overall, food and desert.
Yeah, my name is Jackson Groves. I'm an Australian travel blogger and Instagrammer. I'm a graduated journalist, but I never really wrote for a magazine or anything. I just went straight to my travel blog. I do budget and adventure travel. I've been traveling non-stop for 2 years now as a backpacker. I've never spent more than $12 a night on a room. Which, well, would be hard in Israel, but Southeast Asia isn't too hard. I love, adventure travel, so pretty much when I get to a country, I find out from all the locals through Instagram or wherever, where the cliff jumps are, where the waterfalls are, the viewpoints, if there's anything crazy we can do in that place. And then in between that, I find the food and the culture and the people along that journey. My Instagram is just my name, jackson.groves, and my blog is journeyera.com. It's just travel guides for people who are interested in traveling in a similar way, doing adventurous things and all the natural stuff. So Israel highlights, I think we stopped at a spot in the Dead Sea, and it just looks like a tree from the shore. It's a dead tree, but when we fly the drone over the top, we'd seen a photo of it before. We didn't discover a new place or something. Yeah, thank you, Alex. But from the shore, it just looks like a dead tree, right? But when you fly over the top, it's like a natural hot tub, if you like. That's how I like to describe it, a salt rock formation, and the girls were just sitting in it, and it's just a salt formation in the middle of the ocean, and it's one of those times where you look down at your screen as you're shooting and you can't really believe that something that beautiful or that epic is sitting right there. And yeah, for me, those moments are really cool and came out of nowhere. So that's probably one of the highlights for me, just take me by surprise.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alex. My blog is Alex in Wanderland. I've been blogging since 2009, and I blog in a very diary style, first-person narrative. So it's kind of like I let people read my journal as I'm traveling the world, and that just fosters a really close connection between my readers and I. This year, I'm actually branching out and starting to run retreats, and I'm so excited to kind of now turn that into an in-person relationship with some of the people who've been reading my blog for so long. Like I said, I'm originally from New York, but I spend most of my time in Thailand or on the road these days. And I focus a lot on diving related content or just anywhere kind of warm and by the sea. So for me, the highlight of Israel so far has also been the Dead Sea. I spent a lot of time in different bodies of water, and that one was just so unique. I loved floating in it and swimming in it, swimming out to that tree. And I also arrived early before the Vibe tour. They connected me, since they knew I loved diving, with Out of the Blue, who are here tonight, actually. These guys, they're like the diving experts in Israel. And we went diving in the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, and most uniquely in the Dead Sea, which I think they said only like 200 or 300 people in the world have done. So that was such an incredibly unique experience to get to kind of see it from all angles. That's really been my highlight so far.
Okay, hi. I'm Melissa, so I'm the French-Canadian one in the group, so I'm a bit nervous about the English situation, so please, don't judge me. Okay, so I've been abroad for almost 4 years. My blog is abrokenbackpack.com. It's all about long-term travel on a budget. So basically, I left with not a lot of money, actually, less than 2,000 Canadian dollars, which is really not a lot. Canadian dollar sucks, basically. I made it happen, basically, and I've been abroad. I still eat 3 times a day. So far, so good. And now I'm in Israel with Vibe, which was pretty amazing. I've been wanted to come here for a really long time, especially since I met so many Israeli people when I was traveling in Southeast Asia. So they were kind of telling me that their country was the best, so I had to see it. It turns out that it's really nice. First, I think Israeli are super friendly. We went for a dinner, for the Shabbat dinner the other day, and it was so much food, but also really good connections. I really felt really welcome, every time I was going to have a dinner with a friend or just towards all these days. And I think the biggest highlight would be the desert. Camping in the desert was pretty cool too. So I made it. That's fine. No silly mistakes. I hope so.
Sounds like you guys had an amazing time. I guess before I start asking questions regarding your experience as bloggers or influencers, first of all, you're professional travelers. So I guess my first question would be, tell us about an amazing experience while traveling, something that influenced you. It can be a place, it can be people, it can be anything significant.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess one of my goals when I travel, and this is kind of specific, is to wake up and watch the sunrise. And I've been fortunate enough to be one of the first person into a few places. So I was the first person into Machu Picchu when I went, woke up early, waiting in line at 2 a.m., ran up a mountain sweating with all my camera gear, got in, and then you get these few minutes alone in a place like that, and it's a really unique, really cool experience. A kind of funny story around that, I guess, would be when I tried to do that exact thing in China to go see the Great Wall of China, because if you go to the Great Wall of China in the middle of the day, in the middle of tourist season, you're going to see 1 million people on the Great Wall of China, and in my mind, I kind of wanted to see it and experience it with nobody else out there, at least for a little bit. So I woke up at 4 a.m., got in a car. There's a time change. Ended up getting there 3 hours before the wall opened and just sat around waiting. While I was waiting, the employees started to show up at the Great Wall, and I was trying to kind of convince them to let me on early. And I don't speak very good Mandarin, I guess, if anybody could have guessed that. And eventually, the lady that was working there let me on, like a little bit early. There were tour buses showing up. And I started sprinting on the Great Wall, like with nobody else on it, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go try to find a cool spot to watch the sun come up. This is gonna be awesome. And I don't know if anybody knows anything about the Great Wall, but it was literally designed so that you can't run on it. So that when people would get on the Great Wall, they would trip. And I probably fell 10 or 15 times running like a kilometer to get to this spot. I get there, I'm like, this is so cool. And I kind of like look around and I'm enjoying the moment and the sun comes up. And within 10 minutes, I realized that there are over 100 entrances to the exact area I'm in. So I just ran like a mile essentially to be in a spot that I could have accessed from the other side and got the exact same experience, but it was like the idea behind it, you know? So I think stuff like that's really cool when I travel.
Thank you.
I think this is a really hard question because I've had so many great experiences traveling. So I wanted to talk more about maybe traveling when I first started traveling. So I traveled before this, but 2002 was probably when I first did a big, like, long-term travel. And that was before Instagram, before Facebook, before... Yeah, I know I'm old. Thanks.
Look, everybody, right? Becky, Dijk, woo!
So I really loved, like, the experiences that I had when I traveled and backpacked then because I was, younger and more adventurous. And I did a bunch of stuff that even to this day, I still haven't seen anyone doing in Cambodia and Laos. And on Instagram, I still haven't seen some of the places that I went to, which I think I loved that way of traveling because you just had a rough guide, a Lonely Planet, and you kind of winged it. You got on a bus and you asked where it was going and hoped for the best. And you sat on it for 18 hours and someone would drop you off somewhere in the middle of your journey and you'd go to a wedding that you didn't anticipate going to and hope another bus was going to come. And I just really like that way of traveling. And I do now sort of feel that we focus so much on the photography, and I'm really guilty of that, and not just the experience. So I've had tons and tons of experiences, but I still try and like think about, put the camera down and actually enjoy the place that you're in and remember those times of how I began traveling. I don't know whether that's a useful answer to anyone, but otherwise it's narrowing everything down from 100 different travel experiences.
Thank you.
I guess for me, the most memorable type of experience are really the messed up ones that you hate at the time, or like that you battle through. And I got food poisoning in Kathmandu the night before I was meant to start my Everest Base Camp trek, which is a 12-day journey with just me and my guide. And so I slept in, it was maybe 38 degrees Celsius that day, and I slept in 3 layers of ski gear in my hotel room, and crawled out of my room and took the taxi to the airport. And I didn't think I was ever going to finish it, but I thought I would give it a shot. Maybe I would recover. And so I spent the first 3 days of the trek with food poisoning, and we made it only 3 hours. And I spent the next 2 days just in a room with one window, hoping I would recover. And then I moved past the food poisoning and then got altitude sickness on day 4 and 5. I vlogged the whole thing for some reason. It was the only time I ever vlogged, so it's there for me to painfully rewatch. But I think the point of the whole story is that like that week really sucked, and all I could eat was pancakes because I was so like worried about getting sick again. So I'm just kind of trying to battle my way through life with my pancakes, just my guide who doesn't speak English. But then, yeah, we made it to Everest Base Camp trek, and it was the sunrise watching Mount Everest from the top of a mountain with no one else there. And I really like the idea of, I kind of look at traveling as growing, so every time you do something, you just add a little bit to yourself, and those moments are, they really add a lot to yourself, and you can kind of pull from that when you take on new experiences. So when, yeah, for sure, the ones that suck at the time are really my memorable experiences.
Well, like Becky, I find this like an impossible question because I have
know.
so many favorite travel experiences. But one that I think is kind of relevant this week is since Midburn is coming up and I'm going and I'm so excited about it, is Burning Man. I go to a lot of festivals, but none of them are quite as meaningful as that one in my mind. I've been twice. And the first time I went, it really was before I went, I heard so many people say like Burning Man is life changing, and I like really rolled my eyes at them and thought like their life must not be that exciting, but it really was life changing. There were so many small aspects of it that really had a huge impact on me. Like I found living with my garbage and my trash that I produced for an entire week and having to like transport it out myself really meaningful. I was already really interested in sustainability before that, but it kind of got me like obsessed, and now that's something that's really important to me, and I blog about a lot, and I post about a lot on social media, and I kind of, it's one of my little like pet projects that I'm always trying to share different ideas of how people can travel a little greener and have a little smaller of a footprint. And just a lot of the ideas that are shared there. I don't know how familiar everyone here is with the idea, but there are kind of 10 principles of the festival, and some of them, like radical generosity. I really spent a lot of time in that week thinking about like how I could be a more generous person with my time and my energy, and how generous people are with me, especially when you travel. I think you just receive so much generosity everywhere you go. So I found that an extremely meaningful experience, and I'm really looking forward to the Israeli version next week. Maybe I'll see some of you guys there, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's really tough questions, but if I have to think, when I started traveling, one of my favorite moments was actually via couchsurfing. So back in the days, couchsurfing was a lot more popular than it is right now. It's still a thing in Israel, actually. I heard a lot of couchsurfers around here, but in Europe, it was even more popular before. So like, I was looking for a place in Athens, and someone told me, well, I cannot host you because I'm going on this camping trip, but you're like, feel free to join. And we ended up being like 5 people from around the world, like going camping. Well, he called it hardcore camping, which basically meant he wanted to say that there was no shower, no toilet, just you dig a hole and you do your own thing, you know? So he said it was for 2 weeks, and then we would go in some islands where like nobody goes. It's just like local people, basically, no tourists, which was really fun. And like I thought I will try it for 3 or 4 days, and if I like it, I'll just stay the whole 2 weeks. So I did, actually. The first time I went to dig a hole, it was quite a challenge, but in the end, it was not a big deal. But for 2 weeks, basically, I was sleeping under the stars. It was too hot to sleep in a tent, and I was just looking at the shooting stars, and it was like just so pretty. And like this moment, you know, when you feel like so small in the world, but at the same time like so huge, just because like you feel so powerful, like you feel like so amazed to be somewhere. And then that feeling was really the feeling that was triggering me. Like, I love traveling, I love this life, I love the world, I want to get more of this vibe. And basically that was it. Like, I sold everything and here I am, basically.
So, Melissa, you already partially answered my my next question, which is, so you guys all traveled before you became bloggers, vloggers, or photographers, and I guess my question is, when is the moment you decided you want to do this professionally? You want to be an influencer, and you want to pursue this in a professional way? So you semi-answered that, I guess, but if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, actually, that was not exactly when I started. It was more like via boredom. Like, I was bored in a farm in Australia, and then I always loved to write. So then I thought, I don't know if I can actually write in English, but maybe I should give it a go. And when I do something, I like to do it well. So then I started making research and stuff. I got lucky. One of my articles went viral like the second month. And then I was like, wow, people like read what I'm saying in English, even though I speak broken English. Like, I was really amazed. that all especially like my top countries were English speaking countries, and I was just like, but these people they don't have anything to do, right? And then I realized maybe I could have an influence, and it was kind of just, I needed to entertain myself, and then it turns out that I could entertain other people, basically.
I studied communication design at university, and I was doing some small graphic design jobs for a lot of travel bloggers. I can't really remember how I got plugged into that, but once you work for one of them, you kind of then can start working for all of them because they share your information. So I was looking at travel blogs all the time, and with a lot of them I was thinking, I think I can write and photograph a little better than this. So I think I just felt kind of competitive, and I loved reading them. So I just thought, yeah, why not start writing one? So I started a blog kind of before my first big solo trip, and it's been just a absolutely enormous learning curve from there, because I think I actually was decent at writing and photography, but I had no idea how bad I was at other things, which I'm still learning along the way, like business.
I think I didn't really know why, but I'm drawn to it somehow, and I know I'm drawn to it somehow because I wanted to be a blogger before I knew what a blog was, and I only know this in hindsight because 2 years before I started my blog, I wanted to go to Bali, and I was going to rent a motorbike and drive around the whole island and document it, and I was only going to spend $10 a day, and I had all these plans, and I bought a notebook, and I was writing things down, and I got there the first day. I found a motorbike for $3 a day. I thought I was going really well. And I'd never written an article before. I didn't have a blog. I didn't know where I was going to put it, but I thought a lot of people were going to read it. I didn't really know how. And looking back, it's really stupid because no one was going to read it. And I remember the only thing in the notebook I wrote down is I had lunch at a shop on the side of the road. It was going to be a terrible article. And on the 30th hour of my 10-day trip, I smashed the bike and knocked 3 teeth out. I put 11 stitches in my chin and flew back to Australia. So that was my first attempt at being a blogger. And then I matured in the next 2 years, got a journalism degree, and then really gave it a proper crack, and it stuck. So.
My experience is completely different to everyone else's. I think I had a long career in finance. So I worked for 10 years at UBS in London. So completely different. Absolutely zero experience in writing. I always loved photography, so that was always an element, and I always loved travel. And back when I was really young, I used to go to conferences because I always thought I really want to write for Lonely Planet because I was using them as my way of getting around, as I mentioned. And I always thought that was a really cool job, but it was not accessible. To become, you had to be a journalist. It wasn't really an accessible career, and it was a very hard thing to break into. So I did finance instead, and hated it, and did that for 10 years. And then I actually met someone, and he was from America, and I was from England, and it gave me the push to quit my job, and we traveled together in South America for 6 months, and we both tried to think of what could we do, what business could we start, and we were really thinking about entrepreneurial ideas, but didn't really have anything. But the one thing was, a friend of mine said to me, she had her own clothing line, and she said, well, the thing about my clothing line is to get traffic to that, I get it through my blog, and she had a travel blog. So she said, even if you don't know what you want to do yet, start a blog of some description. If it's going to be travel related, or if it's going to be, if you think maybe your product eventually is going to be in whatever field it is, start the blog, because you can start building that community and that traffic of some description that when you think of your idea, you can link the two together. So she said about a third of her traffic was coming from her blog to her clothing line. So I started to do my own personal blog, had some disasters with tech guys, decided not to continue with that. Also realized I really didn't want to feature myself, so that's why I started the Travel Girls account, and I actually moved over to doing an account that featured other people in their travels, because I felt I can travel a lot, but I probably can't collate as much information as I can from everybody around the world. So it was a bit of a long process. So I quit my job, went to South America, didn't think of a good idea, went back to banking, back to UBS, and had a more higher up role, and then 9 months later quit again. So they weren't very happy with me after taking me back. But it was, I think the one thing is, that's a long story, but the piece of advice I would give everyone is, even if you don't know what it is you want to do yet, start building that following or community in some aspect that potentially you may or may never use it, but you start to get people to buy into you. And eventually, if you think of your idea or something you want to create, that you have that audience already. My journey was not that I went from making a decision, I want to start this company, and then I made it. It was a real progression. It was never an intention to have a female travel community and start running retreats, but that's what happened over a period of time. But by building that community aspect, whilst continuing my other job, I was working 10, 12 hours a day and then going home and working 5 or 6 hours a day at night. So just start building that if this is an area that you want to get into.
Thank you.
So I actually never thought or wanted to do this as a profession, if I'm honest. Like, I always just wanted to travel and kind of like fell into the photography side of things. 4 years ago, you know, I worked in tech. I worked in tech out of college. I got a degree in finance, went straight into sales, did that for the first like 6 or 7 years of my professional life. And that I was fortunate enough to travel through that. So I guess like, if your goal is to travel and if your goal is to experience things, you don't necessarily have to be a photographer or a blogger to do that. You just have to have a means to do it. So that's what I was doing. I was like saving all my money and I was going and traveling. And I mean, 4 years ago, if you go back through my Instagram page, all my photos are with like an GoPro. That's all I use. So I kind of got into it more and more as I was doing it and started to realize, oh wow, this is actually a way that I can do something I love and that could kind of turn into a career. Like, I still don't think of it as a job, really. I don't think of it as like a career or a job. It's almost like I didn't have to think about that the whole time because I had a job, so I was able to focus on doing what I actually enjoyed when I had a camera in my hand, and that was like creating content and sharing it with like my friends and my family. And I think it was like just genuinely like what I enjoyed doing. So that kind of led into more and more stuff like this. And I mean, I'd say like a year ago, I kind of made the decision. I was like, I think if I quit my job right now, it'll force me to go down this path. And I'm at a point where I think, you know, I could do this. So I kind of, you know, made good money in the tech world and like didn't need to do it for money, but I was like, it's something that I want to do from like my heart. So I did it, and like I gave myself a timeline. I was like, if I don't have this going in the next 7 months, I'm gonna look for another job. And for 6 months, I did not have it going. And then in the 7th month, it started going. So it's funny when you like put like expectations on yourself and you really go after them, like you can pretty much achieve something. And I didn't think I'd be able to do that, but here I am. So yeah, maybe like less than a year ago, I really committed to this. So it's been really cool.
Cool. I have a couple more questions, and then we're going to open up to questions from you guys. So I guess you guys have a lot of followers. Can you tell me about maybe a special connection you have, or like a funny, weird incident with one of your followers?
This is kind of funny. I was... Sorry, I have to go twice. You'll have to listen to my voice twice in a row. But I promise I'm Australian, even though I sound American. I can show you my passport. Yeah, I was in a souk, like a small market, while I was traveling, and I was with a guide, and we were going through all these different shops, and I was doing kind of what I've been doing in Israel, like, you know, experiencing it, photographing it. And we get to this little like spice market, right? And I walk into the spice market, and there's this very old man sitting there, maybe like not very old, sorry. He's like middle-aged, like doesn't look like someone who would know what Instagram is, you know? And I see my guide start talking to him and start telling him like what I'm doing, and he's like, the guy pauses and he looks at me and he's like, you have Instagram? And I'm like, yeah, I have Instagram. He like pulls out his phone and puts on his glasses. He's like, what is your name? I give him my name, and he looked it up, and he actually was already following me. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. He's like running a spice market in a souk, like in the middle of the Middle East, and he somehow knew like who I was. So that was like a really cool experience I had with someone. I took a photo with him for me. Yeah, it was really cool.
I don't have any random people that I've found that follow me anywhere. So I probably don't have that. I think I would say connections that I've made and some friendships that I've made out of Instagram, which is a new kind of platform to be able to make friends, which is just surprising, but works really well. More of a other thing that I've got a tendency to do, and Rob experienced this actually, is meeting people via Instagram and then instantly saying, "Oh, come and stay with me. I live in Bali now, and we have a spare room." And I immediately offer for people to just come and stay with us. And I do it all the time, and I do it to random people who I've met through Instagram. So if you contact me, apparently I'll just invite you to come and stay at my house. And I've done that too many times, and it's not been the best experience. We had once. Oh, actually, this is live streaming, right? Some people that came to our house and then pretty much refused to leave. So I discovered that perhaps you should just go and meet them for coffee and see if you have a connection before you just say, sure, come and stay at my house for a night, and then they don't leave for a few weeks. So no, I haven't had any exciting ones, but I immediately offered to Rob to come and stay at my house within like half an hour of meeting him. So we're going to make a decision at the end of the trip whether that's still a standing invitation. Probably not.
So I was on an island called Kauai in Hawaii, and like I told you, I don't spend more than $12 on accommodation. So the cheapest hostel on Kauai is $50 a night. They didn't even have a dorm room. They had a fold-out couch they were going to sell me for $52. And I was like, no, it's not happening. I can't. That can't be the one that breaks the streak. So I couch surfed for the first 9 days, and then a small island. There was no more hosts left. So I was literally in the couch surf guy dropped me off at a bakery, and I was sitting there looking at rental cars, planning my next move. And a guy messaged me on Instagram, 19-year-old French kid, and he was a cliff jumper. And I was like, oh, what's this guy want to do? Does he want to hang out? And he's trying to meet up the next day or something. And we ended up going down to the beach, and I met him there. And his friend was leaving the next day, and they'd been sleeping in a car. And he said, well, maybe you want to replace my friend. And so we slept the next 10 days in the back of a car. On Kauai, and it was a hatchback Toyota Yaris. So, yeah, it was a good 10 days, and we got to know each other.
My story also involves sleeping in a car in Hawaii, actually. I love this question. So I visited Hawaii for the first time, like I think in 2012, and I totally fell in love with it. I was staying at an amazing hostel in Maui, and I like couldn't shut up about it. I was talking about it all the time. So maybe a year later, I got an email from a reader who told me that she had been on her way to Southeast Asia when she started reading all my Hawaii content. And she was supposed to meet a friend in Bangkok, but her friend wasn't going to get there for a few days. So she was like, I'm going to do a stopover at this hostel in Maui that Alex loved. So she got there, and she fell totally in love with it, and she never made it to Bangkok. She just told her friend, sorry, I'm not coming. And she actually stayed and worked at that hostel for 2 years. So the next time that I came back to Hawaii, she reached out again and said, do you want to meet up? And I said, absolutely. And we just clicked immediately. And now she no longer lives in Hawaii, but she's a flight attendant. So we've actually met up a couple times. And most recently, I went back to Hawaii a third time, or maybe fourth time. Anyway, she hopped on a flight out there, and she came camping with me for a few nights. So we were like camping together in this old VW on East Maui, and we were like, this is kind of a crazy connection. And it all really felt full circle. So that was amazing just to feel that I had had that influence on her life and that it all turned out so well and that we got along enough to want to live together in a little camper van in the middle of nowhere. So that was really one of my favorite stories.
Okay, so 2 years ago, I was traveling in Southeast Asia, and then I arrived in Vietnam. One of my Instagram followers reached out to me, and she's like, "Hey, you really have to come to Ha Long Bay. When you come, just let me know. I teach English here, so I can show you around." So then, like, I was starting in Ho Chi Minh, so it took me quite a while to get to Ha Long Bay. When I arrived, she was kind of like really stalking me all the time. She was like, "Yay, are you coming soon? Blah blah blah." Looked at her, she looks legit. I was like, okay, let's meet up. I'm not the kind of traveler who likes like big touristy things. Like I really like to, enjoy more like something different. So normally when you go to Ha Long Bay, you go do that little cruise, like everybody does that. But then she had like an alternative to suggest. So she brought me to this, really in Ha Long City. Where like nobody really goes normally. And then there is like these little fishing boat. And then normally you're not supposed to ask these little fishing boat people like to go on these boats because they can get a fine by the police. So we go on that little boat, and because she speaks Vietnamese, like she managed to handle the thing. So we go on the boat, then like the boat is filling up with water. I'm just like, wow, that is really dodgy, but it's really fun. I like this kind of experience, I guess. And then the girl is kind of emptying the boat as we go, and obviously we're not going that far because she's just paddling, and she's alone paddling, right? And then I was like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. But it was really fun, and it was really different. Like, it was not the typical Ha Long Bay experience. So then after we go for dinner, and then she's like, hey, Mel, you know what? We should do some ice skating because I'm from Canada. So I'm like, what, ice skating in Vietnam? Like, is that really a thing? So we went ice skating in a mall, actually, and then like with all the Vietnamese kids and stuff, which was really funny. So I'm Canadian. I suck at ice skating, so it was really funny. I had a lot of fun. So yeah, basically it was really random, and now like I think she doesn't live in Vietnam anymore, but like I think she's back home. She was from Iran. I'm not good at saying this word. Anyway, so like then anyway, it was really fun, and I think it was a really good encounter because she really made me experience something different that I would not have found on my own. So yeah, that's it.
Cool. I'm really bad at, my sense of time is really bad, so are we good to, yeah, okay. My next question, what's your advice for beginner influencer, someone just starting blogging, writing, photography? What piece of advice would you give them?
First, go for it. Like, honestly, I think when you understand the power of the web and like the fact that you can actually you just need Wi-Fi, and like you can actually have your freedom, and like it's kind of a different lifestyle, but I think it's so powerful, and like there's so much you can do now, like with all these YouTuber and vloggers and stuff. Like the videos are quite big right now. So if you have this talent, these skills, like just put yourself out there. I think first, like that's the start, and don't be shy. I think when I started, I was so shy. I didn't want anybody, like I didn't want my friends to read my stuff. I was a bit like embarrassed about it, I was like, oh my god, I don't want to be one of these bloggers, I don't know. But then in the end, like I was like, if I'm not even proud enough, to put myself out there, why would people want to read my blog, So I think you need to be proud of yourself, like just put yourself out there, and you have nothing to lose anyway at the end of the day. So I think that's it.
I guess my advice would be to do something that you're really passionate about, and if it's blogging, then that will be the right path for you. I feel like when I go to a travel blog, I can tell within seconds if it was created by someone who loves storytelling and loves travel and really wants to share that, or if it was kind of created by someone who is like, oh, this has the false notion that it's a really easy, quick way to make money in travel. And I think those ones that are passion driven are the ones that really stand the test of time and kind of make a mark on people's lives and make a difference. If you are just looking for a way to stay on the road and to make money to travel, I think there's actually like far more effective ways than blogging. But then again, maybe that's like me speaking from my really bad business sense. So you might want to consult with these other people on that. But I do think, yeah, you should just follow your passion and maybe not listen to what the common advice is. A lot of times when I go to blogging conferences, I hear people say like, that you shouldn't write so much about yourself. Think about like what the reader wants. And to be honest, I write about myself all the time. I do a lot of navel gazing on my blog, and that has worked out really well for me. And I think my blog, to have a bunch of top 10 lists, I do guides and things when they're relevant and when I feel like no one else has covered that information. I really want to share a place I've been to that no one else that has covered. But for the most part, I really do write like a lot of kind of musing posts about my journey and how I felt and my emotions. And that's kind of what everyone tells you is not going to work. Like, it's not SEO friendly. They're not really viral posts, but they've over time built me a large loyal audience. So it might not be what the top 10 blogging tip posts will tell you, but it's worked for me, and that's what I felt passionate about. And if I had tried to do it any other way, it wouldn't have worked for me. So I hope that's helpful.
I think maybe we get called a travel influencer or something influencer all the time, but it's kind of a harsh term because you don't go into the job to influence someone, or a lot of people in this industry will actually say like, oh, my mission is to inspire people, but for me, I never really started to inspire somebody or to influence somebody. I was just traveling, and then that happened as the byproduct. So I think maybe the most important thing, especially in the beginning when it's not going to feel like a career, and hopefully it never does, is that if you just do you and really make clear your story or make how people are going to perceive you. So ideally, I think people would see me as a traveler, budget traveler, going on adventures, pretty up for anything. This kind of like, there's a clear story. It's not just a photo that you saw by one person. So the point is, can you just travel? Or if it's not travel, whatever influence you want to be, can you travel and keep it in a way that really seems quite natural, rather than trying to be an influencer? Because if you try and be an influencer, it's quite a strange thing to want to be. You can't go into a job like this hoping that you gain a certain amount of followers so you can influence someone to go somewhere. I think it's an unnatural way to approach it. So essentially, if you travel and you enjoy that and you enjoy sharing that experience, then if you continue to share the experience and hone your craft, then that is the way to focus on getting started, I think.
I have a couple of things on this. I could probably talk about this topic for a really long time, but I'll try and just say a couple of things. Number one, I would say it's very common now for people to look at Instagram and feel like, oh, I want to get to this level of followers. Once I get there, it will be meaningful. I'll get to 50,000 and then I've reached my goal. And they immediately think, oh, well, now I'm there. I need to have 100,000 and then I've reached my goal. And it becomes very much a vanity metric. And I've spoken to a lot of bloggers and a lot of people in this industry. And I had to kind of almost step away from it because I found it quite odd how obsessed some people are with the number of likes they receive, how many comments they receive, or what their numbers are. And they get very upset if Instagram changes the algorithm and they don't get the followers that they want or the likes they want. So from the first thing I would say is it is a great platform, and it has created a great platform probably for all of us in some way. But I think focusing on your blog or a website, which doesn't have an algorithm that you can't control and is less of a vanity metric and more of a place where you can really put real information, is more important in my eyes. And I think that's something that's shifted over definitely the last 6 months, a year, to 12, a little bit longer. But it took Instagram's fun and was fun, but there's a little bit of the fun taken out now with a lot about the metrics. So my advice would definitely be think about your website, your SEO, and building traffic and an email list. Those things can't be taken away from you. You can't take someone's email list away from you. Like Instagram can say you have 200,000 followers, but we're only going to put your picture in front of 20,000 of those. And suddenly your engagement has dropped, and then you think, what have I done? What can I do to resolve this? Well, if you have your website with traffic to it that's building through SEO and different ways of getting traffic, or your email list, no one's coming along and swiping your email list and saying that's not going to be received by those people. So that would be my first piece of advice from a more technical side. Secondly, try and be creative and a bit individual. So don't look at what everyone else is doing and then go to that destination and just recreate the same picture. I'm very guilty of doing that. It's very tempting. So you see someone's great picture and you really are influenced to go and do the exact same thing. And Jackson was talking about this great spot that we went to in the Dead Sea, and I feel like that's a picture that you would see, and now we all said everyone's going to want to come to Israel and recreate that picture, which they will. It's amazing. But do still try and get off the beaten path and be individual and show your followers something they haven't seen before. I think that's quite important. I had a third one, but I can't remember it now. It's along the same. Those are good enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I feel like everybody kind of touched on it, but like you really have to ask yourself, why do you want to do something? So as a photographer, the photo is kind of like the last piece of everything that goes into it. So I personally love waking up and going on a hike to watch like a sunrise. You know, I love getting up early and like I enjoy hiking. I like being outdoors. So, you know, I think it has to be content first. I think you have to focus on like creating really good content, whether you're a photographer or a blogger, because like Jackson said, if you focus on the end result, if you focus on being an influencer and you don't focus on the content, it's never going to happen. So there's millions of people out there that are already doing this, that are already creating great content. You can use them for inspiration. Where's Eden? Is he here? So Eden's from here, and he creates some of the best images I've ever seen. And like, you know, he's a good example of someone that you can use to say like, hey, like, what is this person doing? He's going all around Israel and creating awesome images. Like, when I came here and I realized he lived here, the first thing I did was look at like for inspiration, photos from it, and I was like, oh, that looks so cool. We can wake up, we can go hike there. That's going to be awesome. So it's really enjoyable to do for me, and the following and the platform that Instagram's given me is really cool, but it also is like a byproduct of having fun and taking photos, which is like kind of awesome. So if any of you are really into photography, feel free to come up to me afterwards and ask me any questions. I'd love to answer them, or go up to Eden because he's local and he creates great images as well. So, yeah.
Thank you guys so much. You had amazing answers. Quick questions from anyone in the audience, and if not, we have maybe some questions on the live streaming. Are there any questions? Anyone wants to ask anything? We said it all. No? Someone?
How long Jackson took to grow his beard? Anybody? No? No, I don't.